Okay, let's see what we got going on here now. If we got the same thing going on. Again, what this does for people is it allows them to go ahead and edit video. This allows people to go ahead and edit video in whatever way that they want to make it look like it's not what I said, right? And so what they want to do is create these kind of demonic videos. Margaret wants to create these kind of demonic videos, especially for the spiritual classroom, in order to serve their demonic purposes. So, okay, I'm going to keep plugging away. Already with 486 drop frames. Thanks, Xfinity, for the connection you got going on there. I've told you to check into what's going on. Nobody cares about the mysteries. Nobody cares about the fact that a teacher, a widow, a spiritual woman who's being maligned by law enforcement can't get a spiritual word out. I wonder why. I wonder why you want to stop me from getting a spiritual word out. I already know why. Okay, we're going to continue with this. Yeah, already 1,000 dropped frames. Nice job. So what I want to show you now is I want to show you a video. And this video is about mirror neurons. So today's topic that we're going to talk about in the spiritual classroom, although it's going to get really chopped up, first time all day long that I've got this horrible connection. Looking at the neighbors. Okay. But you know what? As I have said, it's like a moth to flame, right? They're collecting all the data. They know who's doing this and who's trying to make me look bad. They already know who's doing it. And right now, they're just collecting the data on you, who's doing this, right? Because you are not writing the narrative. I already said you're not writing the narrative. It is frustrating, though, for people who want to get the word, that they're not able to get the word. And they're not able to get an honest word. But, again, like a moth to a flame, they're trying to douse the light, but it is not going to work. Thanks for joining me, the person who is joining me over here. I'm sorry for the choppy video. This has to do with the mysteries that are going on over here and a lot of very corrupt individuals who don't want people to get the word out. Nothing less than corrupt. Complete and entire corruption. Okay. For all of you little people out there who are doing all of your little things to try and not get the word out, we're going to continue on. Okay, so what I would like to do, like I said, is I would like to show you a video. So, mirror neurons are talking about how we are made for compassion. So let's take a look at the video here.
We are not Chunk Club or Stitch Fix. We are nothing close to a subscription service. Watson Style Group is the nation's only
Let me take you back to the early 1990s. Sleepy little laboratory in Parma, Italy, and scientists had a MRI brain scanning machine on a macaque monkey as the macaque monkey was trying to open up a nut. They wanted to see how the neurons would light up. So the monkey's trying to open up the nut, the neurons light up. And just by serendipity, and this is how science sometimes happens, a human being walked into the laboratory. I don't know if it was by mistake, and he was hungry. He saw the nuts and opened up one of the nuts and tried to crack it open. The macaque monkey was totally shocked because who was this invader in his laboratory? And he didn't move. He just gazed at this human trying to open up the nut, just like he had done a few seconds earlier. And then the scientist looked on the MRI brain scanner. The same exact neurons were lighting up when he observed the human being opening the nut as when the monkey opened the nut. And the scientists had not a clue as to what this was. They thought the MRI machine had broken. They then began to put MRI brain scanning machines on other primates, especially chimpanzees with our big neocortex. Then they went to humans. And what they found over and over again is something called mirror neurons. And that is that we are apparently soft-wired, some of the primates, all humans. We suspect elephants We're not sure about dolphins and dogs. We've just begun. But all humans are soft-wired with mirror neurons, so that if I'm observing you, your anger, your frustration, your sense of rejection, your joy, whatever it is, and I can feel what you're doing, the same neurons will light up in me as if I'm having that experience myself. Now, this isn't all that unusual. We know if a spider goes up someone's arm and I'm observing it going up your arm, I'm going to get a creepy feeling. We take this for granted, but we are actually soft-wired to actually experience another's plight as if we are experiencing ourselves. But mirror neurons are just the beginning of a whole range of research going on in neuropsychology and brain research and in child development that suggests that we are actually soft-wired not for aggression and violence and self-interest and utilitarianism, that we are actually soft-wired for sociability, attachment, as John Bowlby might have said, affection, companionship, and that the first drive is the drive to actually belong. It's an empathic drive.
Okay, so that's what I have been saying, is that in that pyramid that we have, right, that we were talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, in that pyramid, we have a great drive to belong. And what's interesting about that is that it is the first drive that we get that is beyond our drive for our basic needs. Not sure if I have that here. And I don't want to go and too far ahead of things. So let me get that from another place that I know that it is, which is right here. So we talked about the same thing in our in our critical classroom. And so here we've got our pyramid that has got our basic needs at the bottom, and then what we have in the middle of the need, the very first drive beyond our basic needs, is the drive for love and belonging. So certainly we have physiological needs, but what we are saying is that even those physiological needs, the purpose and the drive for those physiological needs is to survive. We survive through procreation. We survive through having sex with another human being and having a baby, right? That's how we survive. So even our physical drive is for the drive for survival, which is at its very basic, it is a drive for sex at its very basic, right? But that's not what that's really saying, is it? It's really saying that all other needs, in particular below it, are serving that higher need, right? They are serving that higher need. So, okay. And in my critical thinking classroom, I actually have some pictures of that pyramid being dynamic, changing with cultures. Our emphasis. Where is our emphasis? In Western culture, it's easy for us to say that is our greatest need, because actually in the pyramid, that's what we give our most resources to. Maybe it's not our greatest need. Maybe our greatest need is higher up there, right? But maybe we just don't give our resources to that greater need. All kinds of things to think about. If you're interested in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, as I always was, as soon as I started my interest in psychology, well, there you have a wonderful pyramid where you can take a look at not only the reasons for that pyramid, you can look at the dynamics, how that pyramid changes into a diamond shape or into an inverted triangle. All right? All right, so that upside down, right? That triangle upside down, how our needs can turn into that. All righty then. Yay. I'm able to... I see I have an excellent connection and no more drop frames beyond 6,000, 2,200. Okay. So here we've got the more self-absorbed we are, the less there is to find absorbing. To have no real involvement in others, no identification with them, no interest, in other words, to lack compassion, is to shrink one's world down to the cramped precincts within one's own skull. And there is not enough there for one long solo trip in a car, let alone for a lifetime. And that was said by Neil Platanga in 1987. I had this in the, was it in the Bookless classroom? I think it was in the Bookless classroom that I had that saying there. And that quote that I had a really hard time finding, which is surprising to me since I found it years ago. And now all of a sudden it's nowhere to be found on the internet. I had to go back to my, my PowerPoints in order to get that, that accurate quote. Okay. But here's what I'm talking about, and here's why it's important. I talked about it earlier today. I don't try and repeat too many things, but there's always a little repetition between my classrooms. And the important thing of that quote here is getting a definition for compassion, because that is what that video is really talking about, is that we have a need to connect. And it talks about the story of the mirror neurons, right? And that those mirror neurons help us to connect one another. And that is compassion. So when we take a look at what Platanga said, who's a Christian author, I haven't read, I've seen his quotes. I haven't read anything from him as far as I can remember. But I love what he has to say. And I likely will pick up a book soon of his. But here, to have no real involvement in others, no identification with them, no interest, in other words, to lack compassion. So here, what we are talking about is the same thing. We're talking about connection with another individual, involvement, identification with, interest in. And that's the foundation for compassion. That's the foundation for connecting with one another, right? Back to the triune that we're talking about. That's the connection with our triune that we have, right? What is it? It's interest in somebody else. It is identifying with them. They get you and you get them, right? So it's identifying, interest in, what was the other one? Involvement. And then there is no connection without engagement. I always use that word, engagement. There is no connection without involvement. There is no connection without engagement, right? So that's what we are talking about. Oh, more dropped frames over there. All right, so we are beginning to understand this connection neurologically when we talked about that experiment that Giacomo Rizzoletti did, right, with this monkey that they talked about, right? So, it was the Maccabees monkey, I think. A lot of times they do it with rhesus monkeys, and then they also have been doing it more with chimpanzees, as I said, because they have a larger area of this brain. The prefrontal cortex is part of the brain, like humans do. Hence our big foreheads. Okay. So, let's talk about mirror neurons. Now, one of the things I also said when I put up this quote, I'm pretty sure it was the Bookless classroom, is that I believe that there is a systemic movement to study and basically kill mirror neurons. I have proposed that somebody does research that takes a look at our faces and screens, and the more we have faces and screens, number one, and number two, this systemic use of masks, so that it is hard for me to empathize with you. Because why? Or have compassion is another way to say it. To be involved with somebody, to be interested in somebody, to identify with somebody, right? So what we are talking about is the ability to activate the neurons that do that. All right. Well, this is spiritual connection, so let's also connect this to our spirituality, right? This is a mechanism that that God gave us to connect to one another, the most important mechanism. And what I'm suggesting to you literally is that there is a system in place to destroy these inhuman beings, that they are using psychology in order to destroy these inhuman beings. And just to let you know, anyone who is trying to stop this message is literally on the side of stopping humanity and stopping human life. Anyone who wants to stop this message literally does not support life, because that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about supporting life. Okay? All right. So, it's not what we're talking about. So, we talked about the PNS and how we need to activate the PNS. And I'm going to say, I actually have a very practical, active demonstration of the work it takes sometimes to activate the PNS that you might be interested in. So it's actually a practical demonstration of activating the PNS. So watch my mysteries episode 17, where yesterday I missed class. I missed class because I was in front of a judge and battling with the prosecutor who was trying to prosecute me on a case that as soon as I had evidence, he dropped the case. It should have never been even brought into the courts or before the courts, but this is demonstrating the powerful force that is trying to stop this message. It's here on the internet. It's here with people wearing face masks. I'm sorry. You don't belong wearing face masks. And the fact that you're saying that you had, whatever, that you had to wear it. Did you ever wear it before if you came in with the sniffles? Did you ask me if I prefer that you took the face mask off so that mirror neurons could start becoming effective, right? It was all planned. You guys all look like a bunch of actors. You all look like a bunch of actors to me. You all look like a bunch of actors. So what's the play? I don't care. I just know you lose. That's what I know. Okay. So, and this concerns me because, as I keep saying, it's a very systematic way to kill our mirror neurons. All right. I started to say, watch my episode 17 on the mysteries because I had to calm myself down from 3 encounters with law enforcement officials that shut down evidence about the problems I've been talking about for almost a year now. All right. And so, but the point here is this, I had to calm myself down. So one of the things I did to calm myself down was I took some time. I had the live video scheduled for 2:30. I put it off to 2:45, and then I put it off to 3 o'clock. I wasn't calm enough to do it. And then I wrote down every word that I wanted to say. So here I kept a tablet of the words that I wanted to say because I knew that if I had to try and think about them on the air, that would make me more anxious and nervous. All right. So I wrote down all the words that I wanted to say about what occurred yesterday with the courts and everything. I wanted to write down every word that I had to say. And I'm also going to be back on again to talk about the false police report, that all the false information and how that's not illegal to file false information in a police report by both the officers and by the complainants who didn't want to file the police report or charge, but the prosecutor did. So you can see a very perfect example of how a woman who is a widow and alone, that's a card, that's a card, just to let you know. A woman who is a widow and alone, the kinds of pressures that she still has grace to stand up under. I wonder whose side you're on. Because if I were you, I'd be on the side of grace. And if you knew what my name meant, it meant little grace. So I can refer to myself as being on the side of, if not grace, at least little grace, right? So go watch that video, and in the beginning, I'm calming myself down, and I specifically say that's what I am doing. I'm trying to give you an example of self-control. And the same thing right here with all of this interference in my internet, and it's pouring rain, and I all of a sudden have no interference. Really amazing, amazing, amazing. Anyway, so trying to give you a good demonstration of what it's like to begin to incorporate the PNS, your parasympathetic nervous system, because that is the way that you connect with other people and you begin to open up. This is how you open up to others. You connect with them, right? You could connect with them and then you open yourselves, and now we've got a flow of information. And because we are spiritual beings, what is taking place is something that actually is spiritual, a spiritual connection, right? An interest in, connecting with, and that third one again. Engaging, something, involvement, right? Engaging involvement with it, all right? With another person. So how do we do that? We have to literally calm our body down. For any spirit to come in, we don't want any spirit to come in. Come on, we want good spirits. For our Creator to come in and give us messages, right? What do we need to do in order to do that? We need to calm our body down. That's what we need to do. Okay. Thanks, prosecutor. I liked you. Okay. All right. The emotional brain. And what we have here is, I've got a depiction here. Well, it's not even a depiction. It actually is, like a whatever, computer generated picture of the brain there. Not a lot of detail there, but what I needed to talk about was basically the two sides of these brains, because of our brain. And that's because what we're trying to do is we really are trying to activate the part of the brain that opens us up to a spiritual connection. One way or another, it doesn't matter. We want to activate the part of the brain, wherever it is, and however we can do it. However we can do it. We want to activate the part of the brain that connects us to one another, right? That doesn't repel us from another person, but connects us to another person. That's what we want. And what we know is that our brain has basically two drives is what it is. So all kinds of theories from all kinds of scientists and psychologists about all kinds of drives. Two drives. Maslow says we have 5 drives, right? Henry Murray says we have 16 drives, all right? All this argument about drives. I say we have 2 drives, that we have 2 main important drives. Freud called them the life-death instinct, all right? You can look that up if you want to, if you're curious about the life-death instinct. I say it's very similar in theory, although it is more practical in explanation. And that is an approach avoid mechanism. That's it. So our drive is to approach, involve ourselves, right? Engage, take interest in, approach, or avoid. So those are our 2 main drives. And in fact, most scientists, whether or not they want to detail those drives, would not disagree with what we're saying, with what I'm saying. And the reason why is because what we've determined is that the left brain and the right brain, which some people have heard about, right? So are you more left brain or right brain? The idea here, it's kind of misunderstood, but it doesn't really matter because you get the concept. One of those sides is motivating you more than the other. And this is true. This is true. That some people are more approach motivated, driven by approaching things. Some people are more approach motivated. There are all kinds of different terms that we use for this. One of them is promotion focused. We call it promotion focused. Okay. I'm missing the other ones, the other common ones, but it doesn't matter, because it really is approach motivated is what you are, versus right-brained individuals have a tendency to be avoidance motivated. And this is true. Now, it used to be positive side of the brain, negative part of the brain. It used to be analytic part of the brain and abstract part of the brain, right? All kinds of different ways to look at this left brain, right brain idea. But the bottom line here is it really amounts to, and most scientists would not disagree with me, or you if you said it, approach brain, avoidance brain. So I have interest in you. I want to get involved with you, right? That's what interests me the most, getting involved with other people. But some people really they don't like other people. They don't take interest in other people. They're introverts, but you can be an introvert and that doesn't mean that you don't love or that you don't get involved, right? But they're motivated more, but in this there's a combination here, right? There's a combination here of being fear-based is what it is. Combination of avoidance motivated because you're practical and the event tells you to avoid it, right? Or you could be avoidance motivated because you are fear-based. You really have more anxiety and you have more fear. So you live your life with more caution is what you do, right? Those could be good things, but really in the end, we know that health, longevity, how long I live, right? How healthy I am as I'm living, those are experiences most often enjoyed by approach motivated individuals, all right? And those we see are left brain activated. So left brain individuals have a tendency not to be more positive or not to use more analytic thinking compared to more abstract thinking or whatever it is, detail, whatever you think about. It really has to do with they are really more approach motivated. They tackle things. Goal oriented might be another way to put this, right? So these individuals are also goal oriented, okay? And then on the right brain individuals, so these are individuals that really do activate ideas that are related to caution is what they're related to. Now, we have caution because of two reasons. We have caution because there's an event that promotes caution, an event that occurs that says we should be more cautious, right? We hear a noise. What we do is we stop, right? We stop in our tracks. Unfamiliar noise that might make us fearful. We stop in our tracks and we think about it, right? We don't go running into the grizzly bear, right? No, we stop, we back off, and we become avoidance motivated. Now we can see here that we've got the overlap with fear, right? We've got an overlap with fear. If I stop and I have to take note of what is going on in my environment, there is a feeling of fear. Now that's smart, isn't it? Isn't it? It's smart if there's something in my environment that tells me I need to back away, and then I stop and I listen to that in my environment and I act with caution. That's very smart, isn't it? Right? As opposed to just jumping into a dangerous situation. But if I have the tendency as part of my personality to always avoid, then I am likely more driven by a feeling of fear as opposed to a feeling of caution because of the situation. I'm examining the situation external to me. When I'm examining the situation, I'm examining something external to me, right? But when I'm feeling fear, that's internal to me. So we begin to see how we can have these two unique feelings, dropping frames here again, two unique feelings. I don't know why, since my connection is perfect. I don't know why. Who's screwing around again? Okay, so I can have these two feelings of fear, one based in reality and on external factors, and one based on internal fears that may be because of past experiences that I continue to keep with me. This is a spiritual connection class. So these are the things that we should be praying about, right? These are the things that we see in our lives that demonstrate an absence of fruit. This demonstrates an absence of fruit. What is fruit? Peace, joy, love. When we are operating right brain all the time in avoidance as opposed to approach has, again, all the positive outcomes. It just does. Why? Why? Because we're getting engaged, we are getting involved, we are taking interest is what we are doing, right? And those bring about the rewards of interest. New relationships, greater information, higher levels of thinking, and more complex emotions that go along with this. So when we are left brain oriented and we are approach motivated, we are healthier, period. We are healthier. And when we are activating right brain all the time, even when the event, the current situation doesn't call for it, we are not healthy. We are less healthy. We are less emotionally healthy because we are operating in fear when it should not exist. We are less physically healthy because the consequences of this really of fear is constant stress. And constant stress depletes our resources and that means body, that means that means tissue literally gets depleted. That means muscle literally gets depleted. That means brain matter literally gets depleted. And you can see this very practically because if I'm not using my left brain and engaging in these approach motivations, getting involved, taking an interest, why would that part of my brain continue to activate? I'm not activating it. So why wouldn't that part of the brain begin to get depleted? And also other things like what takes place when I'm approach motivated, like conversations, right? So how about the language and my language capacity getting depleted? Absolutely, without a doubt. We know that the brain gets depleted. We know that individuals, we used to call it dementia. Now we call it basically Alzheimer's is what we do. Basically the same thing, which is a deterioration of your brain. How does that occur? It occurs because you're not using it. When do we say that elderly people use their brain? How do we get elderly people to avoid dementia or Alzheimer's? Pay attention. How do we get elderly individuals to not experience dementia or Alzheimer's? How is that? Conversations. It's that easy. Conversations. We can see what happens to the brain in conversations. What happens to the brain is I'm pulling something from memory and I'm using it in this current situation. So the part of my brain that is utilizing current information is activated along with memory. When I'm ruminating, when I'm depressed, I'm only activating past memories. Think about how you're inside your own head at that time, right? You're just inside your own head. So you are not utilizing all that information that's outside of you. Left brain activation, approach motivated interest. You're losing your interest, okay? So again, the experiment is basically, do I lose brain capacity, right? Real brain matter when my face is constantly on a screen, especially a small screen, right? Especially a small screen like on your phone compared to even a computer screen. Am I losing brain matter? Absolutely. Now, you can be doing different things. Right now, I'm using a lot of thought. There is no interaction, though. In my mind, mentally, I'm interacting with people, but there is no real life interaction going on right now. But I am experimenting the real world, watching my connections, those kinds of things, and then pulling from past memory. But not a lot of connection that's going on with the real event world, right? I see myself, but that is only, an interaction with myself. So even there, I'm losing a lot of activation, right? I'm just simply not activating, and we know if you don't activate that those areas of our brain diminish. So I said, okay, so we're not making those connections. We have deficits, or we lose our ability to use that part of the brain that is emotionally connected. We lose it. That keeps us emotionally healthy, is where I left off. Physically healthy and spiritually healthy as well. Our God, our Creator, expects us to seek Him. And when we seek Him, He will absolutely be found by us. So that is all approach motivated area of your brain. We are supposed to be seeking our Creator, right? Okay, let's move on to the mirror neurons then. So what we said here is, with that video, is that we see that mirror neurons are activated, but what did he say? He said it's soft wired. That's what he said. It's soft wired. All right, we have to contemplate that. That's serious. That's serious business. Our compassion neurons in our brain are not hard. They are not hardwired. They are soft wired. That means the compassion connections in our brain may or may not activate. And if they do not activate, then what we know is they're not in use. If I can't activate them, then we know they're not in use. And if they're not in use, we know that we can either not develop them. We don't know if they're on board in infancy. How could we study that? Right? So we don't know if they never develop. Putting masks on faces, that's a full experiment on poor people to see whether or not our mirror neurons develop when we have masks on. Did you hear me? Did you hear me? What I said is that's a full-on university experiment on people who are not part of that 1%, who are not part of the medical community and in the know in the medical community, and that way are experimenting on the masses to see if they can destroy your mirror neurons. So practically speaking, that's what's happening. Spiritually speaking, it says we won't connect with one another. And right now you can give the big middle finger if that's what you choose to do, and you choose to express yourself in that way, as I often do. Give the big middle finger to those 1% in power that's trying to take away and destroy your mirror neurons by hiding faces from infants, hiding the mother's faces from infants as if we are just monkeys to be studied in that way. I wonder if their mirror neurons of those poor unfortunates will develop if I put masks on their mamas. Interject the big middle finger. For those of you who have, that kind of spiritual savvy to be able to rationalize giving the big middle finger to the people who deserve it and not feeling that your soul is on fire because of it. That's me. So, what are mirror neurons? Mirror neurons are special neurons that activate when you perform a behavior or if you see someone else perform that exact same behavior, as we've seen already. Mirror neurons demonstrate our capacity for compassion, as Neil Platanga said, or as I've often said, it is a very, it's demonstrable. It demonstrates proof. Very demonstrable way that we see we actually do have mirror neurons, and that is because we have a measure a demonstration of how empathy works in our brain. Okay? I'm not sure why I blew that up, because actually what I want to show you here is the other picture, and this is so interesting. Okay? So the other picture of the brain where we see 3 different colors: red, green, and blue. And what do they mean? So here we're demonstrating more evidence for mirror neurons. Let's look at those different colors there. Okay, so what we see here is action words and movements. All right, so action words and movement. So we are reading here, or we are seeing. All right, so we are literally observing or actually doing the movements. So foot movements or leg words. Okay, those are blue activation. Red activation are finger movements or arm words. Not exactly the same, right? Foot movements are not the same as leg words. Finger movements are not the same as arm words, but they are related, aren't they? So we've got actual movements, a foot moves, a finger moves, and then associated action words, leg words or arm words. All right, so arm words might be reaching. Okay, that's an action word, right? Leg words might be running. That's a leg word that's showing movement, right? Green words are tongue movements, okay? And we make our words using tongue movements, right? And then the action words have to do with face, like talking or smiling, right? So we are observing tongue movements, we are observing finger movements, we are observing foot movements, and they are in a brain imaging machine where they're taking pictures of their brain activation there. All right, so those are the areas of interest that are being activated. It doesn't mean that there aren't other areas that are being activated as well. All right, so that's a possibility that there are other areas, but they are focusing on these areas to see if both words, that words and actual behaviors that are similar, if they're activating the same part of the brain, right? And they are. So not exactly, but very similar areas of the brain are being activated. Where the blue areas of the brain are in the middle there, the middle of the 2 brain hemispheres, we see that blue is being activated more often near those middle hemispheres. We see red is activated to the outside of that blue area, right? So in the same places, mirroring the same areas in the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere of the brain. And on the very most outside, we see activation of the green area. So the outer areas of the brain are activated similarly when we do movements or behaviors, as well as when we read associated action words. What does all of this mean? It means that we are mirroring or activating in the same areas. They are activated whether or not we hear a word or whether or not we see the behavior. All right. So now what we're doing is we are looking at hearing. So before we were behavior, eat a nut, or vision, see somebody else. And what we see is activation of the same area of the brain. Now we can do this. We can't necessarily find exactly the neuron, but it doesn't matter, right? We have general areas of the brain that are being activated with something that we have seen or something that we have read, or heard, right? Because actually what's being activated when we read something is we hear the words as well. Okay? So what we see is evidence for the idea that I have neurons that mirror one another when I hear a word, when I read a word, when I behave in that way, right? All of those things are activating. We see examples of activating the same areas when we cross over senses is what we're basically saying, right? We speak a word is different than when we behave, right? But we're crossing over senses, touching and hearing, right? And even the movement of our mouth or tongue as well. Okay, all right. So evidence of mirror neurons, we can very easily see that screens in front of us very easily study the idea that when there are screens in front of us, that we lose our ability to activate areas in the brain that are associated with one another. So we'll see less crossover is what I'm suggesting here. Okay, all right. Let me see what the next slide is, and then I'll see if I'm going to move on or not. All right, so that's the next slide there. All right, so how do these mechanisms manifest in behavior is what we're saying. So what we are saying is to take a look at behaviors, and these are helping behaviors. Do helping behaviors actually lead to improved feelings? All right, so can I help and see somebody helping, and will that activate, what will it activate? Positive emotions in my brain. So seeing or doing is activating positive emotions, and that's what this theory is here from I think it's Anan in Hamilton. I know Hamilton is one of the names. I'm not sure about that first name, but I'll get it. No, Atkin, not Atkins, something like that. I'll get the name right. It's probably up there somewhere, and I just can't read it with my glasses. Okay, so that's it. We will be back here. I will be back here again at what time? 2 o'clock for the philosophical classroom. Little overlap in the philosophical classroom, but not a lot. I don't have this slide. I forgot what we're talking about. Oh, groupthink. No overlap at all. Groupthink. The making of sheeple. Come back here for my philosophical classroom on groupthink. The making of sheeple is what we're calling it. I am here today. Usually I'm not here in the philosophical classroom on Wednesdays, but I had my day off yesterday, as you know. Whoo, stress, unbelievable stress. Check out my episode 17 of the mysteries to see how to handle great stress and activate your PNS, which is what we need to connect with our spirit, with our Holy Spirit. Okay, this is Annette Feravich, Dr. Annette Feravich. I am the teacher, and this is the classroom. Thanks for joining me.